All right, we're doing the second section of chapter 6 today. It's all about parallelograms. So yesterday we learned about polygons, and then we talked specifically about quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals had 4 sides. Today we're going to talk about parallelograms, which is a special type of quadrilateral. So still 4 sides, but you'll learn some other properties that are true. We are done with here 10:05, yep. All right, so you need to write everything that's on the board. What? I will give you some time. So first is the definition for parallelograms. Correct. The good news is that those 4 properties we're going to do tomorrow as well. So once you get them in your notes once, you'll be good. Tomorrow should be a little bit of a lighter day. But a parallelogram is a quadrilateral, so it has 4 sides. And both pair of opposite sides are parallel. So this is what a parallelogram looks like. These 2 are parallel. These 2 are parallel. When that happens, these 4 properties are true. So I'll give you some time to write those down. Then we'll talk about what they mean. Yes, write all of them. Oh. You don't really have to draw the ones at the bottom. They're just kind of examples. I'm going to put the properties here when we talk about them. But as long as you have it in writing, I think you should be fine. If you're more of a visual learner, I would set these up and we'll fill in some more information in a minute.
So what are we supposed to highlight in our notes?
When we highlight notes, we highlight vocabulary terms in yellow, formulas in blue, and examples in pink. If you have those 3 colors. If not, you can use like orange instead and green instead. All right, so once we have a parallelogram, there are 4 things that we know are true. The first one is that opposite sides are congruent. So if you drew these parallelograms down here, you can go ahead and label the opposite sides congruent. The opposite angles are also congruent. So this one will be equal to this one. This one will be equal to this one. So opposite sides congruent, opposite angles congruent. Those are kind of the easy ones. The next 2 are not super challenging, but a little harder. The consecutive angles are supplementary. Supplementary means add to 180. So for example, if this one was 80, the one next to it would be 100. Okay? And since opposite angles are congruent, this one would also be 100, and then this one would also be 80. So the ones next door are supplementary, the ones across are equal. And then the last thing is that the diagonals bisect each other. So we learned that diagonals go from one vertex to the other. And if they bisect each other, that means that they create congruent segments. They slice each other right down the middle. So go ahead and draw this one. You can tell that this is a parallelogram because do you see how the sides across from each other are labeled as being parallel? So when both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, we have a parallelogram. What do I know about the side lengths of a parallelogram? The opposite sides are congruent. Good. So as you're drawing this, if BC is 14 units long, how long would BA be? 14. Also 14. So you can just label it as you draw it. All right, if AB is 7, what would DC be?
7.
Also 7. Very good. On number 2, why don't you just write the answers with me? So you can write DA equals and DC equals. So DA is this guy right here. What does DA equal? 1.25. It's the same as the side across. Good. And then what does DC equal?
0.35.
Very good. 75 cents. So number 3 is all about the angles. So why don't you go ahead and draw this one? I'll give you a second. And then we are going to label these angles. So right in the figure, we'll label angle P, we'll label angle Q, and we'll label angle R with their measures. If you want to make a list over here, you could do that as well. So one of these angles is super easy. Which one is it? The one that's across from the S. What's across from the S? Q. The angle, or the measure of angle Q is what? 144. Opposite angles are congruent. So the one across from the 144 is also 144. What do I know about consecutive angles? The ones right next to each other. They add to 180. So I'm going to do 180 minus, and you are correct, 36. So the measure of angle R is 36 degrees, and the measure of angle P is 36 degrees.
Yay. So 36 degrees. How come we have to do two?
So you don't need to draw this one, but do write the answers with me. So the measure of angle Q we need, the measure of angle R we need, and the measure of angle S we need. Which one is the easiest one?
Q.
No.
Wait.
R, the one across. Okay? These are the congruent, which means
87.
they're the same. Good. So the measure of angle R is 87 degrees. The other ones are both right next door to the 87. So what can I do?
180 minus 87.
180 minus 87. And what do you get?
Ooh. I'm ready. Okay.
What's 180 minus 87?
Oh my god. No.
Anyone can do it. 93. Good. So this next one, example 5, has to do with those diagonals. It was the fourth property you wrote down. We learned that the diagonals bisect each other. So again, on this one, you can just write the answers with me. The hardest part is to figure out where you're looking. So GE is where we'll start. GE, you have to look along the same diagonal.
Oh.
So it will be congruent as the other side of the same diagonal. So how long will GE be? 6.2. Very good. And that's because these bisect each other. So define DF. DF is actually the whole thing.
Would it be 16.4?
So it would be 16.4. Very good, because these would both be 8.2. And 8.2 plus 8.2 is 16.4. Awesome. We are using the same property here. It's all about those diagonals. So here they give you the length of the entire diagonal, CE. So if the whole thing is 22, how long is GE? GE, if the whole thing is, if the whole thing is 22, and G is right in the middle, because they bisect each other,
11.
the part down here, GE, would be 11. Very good.
11.
And this other one, GF is this guy.
It would be 9.
It would be 9. 9 just represents this half over here. So GF would be 9. So it depends on what they give you. If they give you the whole thing, you divide it by 2. If they give you one side and they ask for the other side, it's the same. If they give you one side but they ask you for the whole thing, then you multiply by 2. So it just depends what they give you and what they ask you for. Questions? All right.
Yes.
All right, this next one, we are solving for X and solving for Y.
Oh my God, how many examples we need?
There are 8 examples. All right, what do I know about either one of these?
Why?
Y is 130. That equation, once you set it up,
Wow, 130.
131, sorry. Opposite angles are congruent. So those two are just going to be equal. Now, I'm actually going to write an equation for the next one. What do I know about X?
X equals 180.
X plus 131 equals 180. I know that consecutive angles are supplementary. So when I add those two, I should get 180. Now, this is where we just subtract and subtract. And what does the x equal? 49. Very good. All right, number 8, I'm going to do kind of rapid fire. If it doesn't make it into your notes, that is fine. But I do want to show it to you. Because on number 8, we're going back to the side lengths. What do you know about opposite sides?
The hypotenuse.
No. Opposite sides are... What do I know about opposite sides of a parallelogram? It was the first property you wrote down. Opposite sides are congruent. So to find y, I'm going to do 5y minus 3 equals 12. And to find x, I'm going to do 2x plus 1 equals 5. And if you want to label it in the diagram when you're working on your homework, it would look like this. Okay? Now, just a reminder, two-step equations. The answer should be 3 for the top one, right? Okay? This is our last one. Yep. All right, so just remember opposite angles congruent, opposite sides congruent, angles next door add to 180.
What did you say?
When you're looking at the sides, the opposite sides are congruent, so make them equal. If you're looking at angles, like on example 7, the ones across from each other, the opposite angles are congruent, the ones next door add to 180. All right, I'm going to put the summary right at the top so that you can look at this slide if you need to while you're doing your homework. So today we learned about, do you remember what these are called? Parallelograms. All right, here comes your homework. We are on a short schedule, so not a ton of time to do it, but still a little bit.